Right, good evening. I would like to call to order the Berlin-Boylston Regional School Committee. As you can see, this is our first meeting live and in person. Some folks haven't even met each other in person up until this point, right? So it's been a little over a year. March of 2020 was our last meeting in person, and so it's good to be back, and we'll continue to make changes, do what we need to do to make this experience obviously safe and and working for everybody, right? So as always, this meeting is being recorded, and your image and your voice may be broadcast. Just a reminder, we are all wearing masks, so we're just speaking into the one microphone, so if everybody make sure that they take a moment to speak clearly, speak up. If anybody does need to speak without a mask, obviously we can have you move somewhere else. If you need to do that to give certain distancing, that can happen as well. We can take a moment, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the
United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I don't know if anybody else nervous that they didn't know that the Pledge of Allegiance. Quite haven't done it. I hadn't done some time, so it was like Ryan's like. Okay, we did not have any parents or any public comments submitted via the email process for tonight's meeting. Just an update for those watching in public. If you would like an opportunity in the future as we continue to work with the process to provide a public comment, please email that to parentquestions@bbrsd.org. Those public comments will then get, if you're not able to attend here, those comments will get read during the public comment section of the meeting. And you always have the option of attending in person for a public comment. Any public comments from the audience? Hearing none. All right, moving to our agenda. Approval of payroll and warrants. Obviously, we're not passing them around, but we are. Woo! Really getting back on the horse. Okay, good. So we're good from that perspective. Okay. One agenda item I'm going to add for agenda perspective because I missed it. To the email, Angela will add discussion at the end as item number 11 on the Marion Hawkins Scholarship. So we'll do that as item number 11 under business items. Consent agenda. Could I please have a motion to approve our consent agenda?
So moved. Second.
Angela, Susan, thank you both. Now that we're back in person, I believe we can move back to the non-need for the roll call vote. We can go back to just group vote. So all those in favor? Aye. Approved?
Yes.
Woo!
All right.
Against, all right? Okay. Okay, two communications from the chair this evening, and then I'll open it up to the committee. First set of communication I would like to make is I want to thank first Dave McCarthy and Joel Boulay from the school who helped us, Paul, along with that team, who helped us make sure we had everything set up and that the streaming capabilities are going to be available for the public and all that good stuff. So I want to thank those folks. I want to thank Jenny Ryan for being here. She said she did not pull a short straw. She volunteered for this 2 weeks ago. Good for her, but thank you very much, Jenny, for being here. And as well as Sean Kilcoyne for helping us out and setting up the stage and getting everything ready for tonight's meeting. So I want to thank all those folks as it could not have happened without them. My next communication is, this is a tough one here. As many of you know, a couple months ago, Angela submitted her resignation as this would be her final meeting on the school committee. I believe, we're talking, I know, right? This will be good. I believe we're about roughly 9 years, right? So 2012, is that right? Okay, 9 years. So obviously, first and foremost, thank you for your service. Just a couple of things that I can take away from my time on committee, with you being a part of it, obviously, the role you played in all the Berlin scholarships over the years, the numerous negotiations and contracts and what you brought to those groups and just your professionalism and your empathy and your ability to just really put us in a great position and help build upon some of the relationships we have with the administration. And then obviously, most recently, importantly, the regionalization work that we did. Obviously, you and Lori at the time, but you know, the work that you guys did during that time was amazing. So thank you for all of that. You are going to be very missed on the committee. So,
Also the new member onboarding process.
yeah,
We
yeah.
really took to lead on that and made that, you know, coming to form. So that's a significant thing for leaving related. Thank you for doing that.
So we all know you're going south and you're going warm. So in our discussion around what to do for you, we did not think a fleece jacket is necessarily going to be appropriate for your trip to Florida. So there is a, thank you to Christy and Susan for helping all this together. There's beautiful days in there for you to kick down Florida. Anytime you put some flowers in there. Think of all of us still sitting.
Well, I really enjoyed my time on committee, and I've enjoyed working with everyone over the years, and the admin team is just phenomenal. So I just can't express my appreciation enough, and I'm happy to serve, and I've done my best, and I don't think I can miss it, though. It's time.
Really? Come. Thank you. Any other comments? Okay.
I just want to
Sure.
say, I think
Yeah.
Angela wins the prize for the, I've said this before, for the school committee photo on the video, CD, one of the cable access images of looking like she's having the most fun on the school committee of anybody I've ever seen. It's a great big smile, leaning forward at the table, like, this is the greatest position ever. So kudos to you for setting the model for us.
And Angela, I just wanted to add too, I think one of the things I appreciate the most about your time here is you've always asked good questions, you've always asked thoughtful questions, you've always challenged us, and you've always kept the good of the region in mind in everything you did. You never made a decision without having good information, and I just want you to know that it's very much appreciated.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
And I want to say, you know, I think one of the things we talked to superintendent is want to be supportive and get honest feedback. I could always count on you for that. So I'm going to miss that. Not that I was on TV, but since you were the first, I really did appreciate it. It helped me a lot.
So, in an effort to keep tonight's agenda moving, somewhere in the middle or so, I will ask if anybody needs bio break or a mask break. You know, I think we're all probably for the first time maybe sitting under these lights with a mask on. So, otherwise, if anybody else, just in the effort to keep me moving, if anybody needs to do anything, please feel free to stand up and go do what you need to do. Obviously during the meeting. So, item number 7 on our agenda is election discussion. And I don't want to spend too much time on this. Obviously, it's an important topic. You know, we had parent communication this week requesting that we had an update on our election. And unfortunately, I didn't have a great update to provide the parents. And, you know, I kind of thought to myself, though it isn't a large group of people looking to see when the election and kind of getting some information, it does, you know, I think it's a topic that does deserve, and obviously there is some interest in what we're going to do with that. So I just wanted to kind of bring it back up. And my goal is to hopefully for us to get ourselves in the direction where we kind of put this topic to bed a little bit and just have an answer for people and be like, well, this is what we're doing, this is the process, this is when we hope to have our next election. So it was kind of suggested and talked about, and the idea floated around a potential survey. I initially said parents, but I was obviously makes sense to provide a survey to the entire communities. I would need some help trying to figure out. I know how to easily distribute it to the parents. I'm not sure how to easily distribute it to outside of the parent group, community perspective. I know what the towns do, stuff like that. So we'll have to maybe ask for like maybe website, town website links or that type of stuff. I know, like, town use electric bills and stuff like that. And I don't know if that's an option we have with the time that we have or desire, but obviously, if we did do a survey, we would go to the entire communities. And really kind of where I see us at from this perspective is we have two options. And I'm gonna try to give all the information I have, and then we can have an open discussion about it. In my opinion, we have two options, which is we wait until our November 2022 next election cycle, which I agree, that is a long time, and it's not necessarily from a democratic process. That will be a long time before we had, with regionalization and all that heavy, with regionalization, I think that sort of compounds it because we didn't have elections because of that whole process. So it's been a long time since we've had elections. We've had some turnover, but it's been an appointment process, right? The other option obviously is a special election. When the topic first came up, I did go through the due diligence of finding out from both town clerks what the cost would look like for a special town meeting. It is roughly $7,000. It's about $3,500 each town cost for special election. Most of that is made up of ballots, postage, and the security, so the police, that type of stuff. And then obviously the remainder is the folks who want volunteers and the workers for the polls. When I in that draft survey that I put together, I put $8,000 to $10,000 only because I'm a business guy and I always plan for the worst and assume maybe we might run into some other challenges. The cost of postage fluctuates. We obviously are going to have to provide in obviously mail-in ballot options still at this point because that's what the mandate is. So postage costs could go up and that could fluctuate, that type of stuff. So I was sort of just padding the stats a little bit to sort of give an estimate. So that's kind of where I came up with that number in what I wrote. The other question that came up from a couple of committee members was I did talk to Russ and he's not 100% sure on the requirement for the home rule petition with legislators. He thinks we might still need it. Okay. The only other option of that is if both towns agree that we don't need to go through the home rule petition act. Both towns are okay holding a special election without having to push that through state legislation. But that could be a touchy subject, and I can't see necessarily the towns agreeing to that, but we can surely ask them that and find that out. So, with that being said, Russ has edited and redone our home rule petition document. I got that from him today, and it's been provided back to the town managers for review for town legal counsel. And essentially, what would happen is we could submit that back to legislation to try to get it back into the queue for getting through legislation. Now, with the pandemic, it's still way behind. Our current home rule petition act isn't even anywhere near the top of the list to even be discussed. So what that does is that puts us in obviously a timeline quandary, which is we really can't do anything until we get that approved. And then on top of that, what I have asked town clerks, town managers is what's the time frame process to put together a special election? I don't know what that is. Obviously, you have to allow time for pulling of papers and signatures and all that stuff, time for campaigning. I mean, a typical campaign process starts, I think it's about 3 months long. It starts, you pull papers in, or at least, I'll use Boyle because that's right. I think you pull papers in March, campaign in April, and the election's in May. It's a 3-month process, right? So at some point, we need to decide when that time comes to that point, and we're getting closer to November anyways, or next year anyways, do we want to utilize the funds from the school budget to pay for a special election? When this first did pop up, I did work with Bob and I'll confirm with him. We did potentially sock away $8,000, did we not?
We would have a way to pay.
We would have a way to pay for it. So I did preempt and let Bob know early on the potential of this somewhere in the future in the next 12 months. So that's all the information I have. So really the discussion tonight is, do we want to make any decisions? Do we want to move forward with the home rule petition act and see where that gets us? put us in a position to have a special election. And then the discussion around, I know when we talked about this in the past, there wasn't a great appetite, at least on the committee, to utilize school budget funds for a special election. The initial response from the towns was neither town was willing to assist in paying for it. We could go back and ask again, if maybe we can split it, but I think that's a step somewhere down the line once we know we're getting to that point. But, so that's where we're at, so I'll leave it open for questions, comments, discussion.
Just a point of clarification, are we making any decision tonight? Are we waiting for a proposal?
We need to decide, we need to decide as a school committee how we want to go about handling tonight as it relates,
We want to make a decision tonight.
yeah, I'm not, we're not gonna, there's no vote yet, but I think we should, we can easily as a school committee decide we don't want to move forward with the special election, we don't believe it's warranted, and we can just set our date as November 2022. And then, obviously, I think that'll gain some pushback from the community, so I know what's the best interest for the communities to work with the towns to understand how we can go from that perspective. I mean, that's one way to take it. The other way is, we agree as a committee tonight to continue pushing forward with the Home Rule Petition Act, see if we can get that approved. And then once we get that approved, then determine if we want to survey the community to see if the community is willing to take the money out of the school budget to pay for special election. Thoughts?
I would think we should do the survey, or push to that. I mean, I think it's fair to the town. And
It's the other option, you can put the survey out first, and if the survey results come back, if there's really not a huge push to do it, then that really would answer the question for us, right?
Yeah,
that was my thought process.
I agree with you. I mean, put it out there before we worry too much more about it. If there's a lot of interest, then I don't see a reason why not spend the money. But if there's no interest, then we know the answer. The other thing about it is, I was reading it today, I believe the way it's worded is the terms of those elected that would have been elected this past November. They're written very specifically that they start new terms, as in like the first term under the new committee. So that might need to be addressed, change the language and agree how that works. I don't know if we do or not, that's maybe a legal question, but it is written that I believe the first term would be up in 22 if we had an election this past November.
Correct. No, yes, it's correct. Now I know, I see what you're saying. If we had our election in November 2020, there were going to be folks who were going to be 2-year terms.
Yeah.
They would be, in November 2022, they would be up for election after their first term. There were 2-year term members. In the agreement, there are, I think in Boylston, it's 2 2-term members, and 1 4, and in Berlin, I think it's 2 4s and 2.
We did the opposite actually, but yeah,
Is it the opposite? Sorry.
yeah, but essentially three people would be up for election in 2 years and 3 would be up for a year.
Just the way it's worded, it specifically says it ends in 22, not 2 years. So you might need to redo that language.
I mean, I think,
The problem, anytime we change any language in the regional agreement, then it needs to be voted by both towns at the town meeting.
Yeah,
So-
we didn't have an election, that was,
Yeah,
so that might
unless
cause
there's-
problems.
Right,
There
right.
might be issues to deal with.
Has to be approved by committee also, so the towns can approve it, then we can see.
Yeah,
It's
there's
quite a
probably, I'm
process.
sure there's a lot of issues, but, that
Right,
need to be looked at because
right. Which that's the reason for the state legislature, because we're asking to do something
Yeah.
against our regional agreement. So it's not as simple as just.
so it sounds like we're going to need to stay with, I mean, with that many things to be decided, we probably should assume that.
might be a question.
I mean, we're all going to be up for election in November 22 anyways.
Right,
Yeah.
We have to, because the regionalization agreement, and because some of us are going to be appointed committee members, where if you're appointed, you have to run for election the next election cycle anyways. So,
I guess my question is the committee members that are here, I mean, are you comfortable staying on the committee till, it's really got to wait till December of 22, even if we didn't run for election in November, because we need to with that.
Put us on the spot.
Well, I don't know. I mean, that's
Let's see
something,
your plan.
but it is
That is a good question.
just a year and a half. And the other point I wanted to make too is regarding the appointment, whether we are fully utilized or not, when someone resigns, it is an appointment process. So even before implementation, we had several resignations. The only difference was at that point, instead of school committee members appointing the new member, we went to the board of selectmen in a particular town. So it's not like this is something new, to be frank.
But it does feel a little different when the school committee is appointing its own members, maybe versus the board of selectmen appointing more broadly, from a broader place.
I just wonder if, do we just make a decision to, I work with Russ and start the process of moving towards a special election. And do we need to survey the communities? I suspect, you know, with the communities, those would feel that probably process should take place, and the democratic process probably should take place. And so I just wonder if it's going through the steps of the survey is warranted, where should we just start the process of moving towards a special election?
Yeah, I would support that, actually. I think that we should have an election. I would like to know if we speak to our legislators, they can work with us to get this through in a timely manner. What they would have to say about the timing of this, because obviously we just don't want another year to go by with this dragging around. It's just, it's bad all around. But I would support moving to the election. We should have an election, but it should be a timely election as much as possible. So I think we need to work with our legislators to make that happen.
Yeah, I could do that. I could work with Russ, redrafted the Home Rule Act. We have it, so once it's approved by the two towns, I can submit it back to Representative Kilcoyne, who's been the one working with us and helping us do it. And, you know, we were all over her to help us in May. And it just, you know, I don't know if legislation has sped up at all now. Maybe it's something that-
Right. I don't either. I'd like to read on that. I also think that it's worthwhile to just reapproach the towns and say, can we share in some of the costs? Rather than taking it away from students' services and students. The school budget. Completely.
Yeah, I have no issue having that conversation either. I think it's probably, we should wait. I mean, I think that's the second step. The first step is obviously getting the Home Rule Act passed, so that we can even plan a special election.
Then if we wait, then we need to be prepared to pay for it all. I guess our plans would be contingent on that, I guess, but I would like to see, I think this is a sort of it's just an accident that this has happened, and it would be nice if we could share in the costs of it with someone, just because it comes away from students ultimately, so I think that's not good.
Bob?
Just wanted to mention a couple of things for your consideration. That there are risks of not having a special election. I think there's a lot more risks than the other route. If we have a special election and if we have effort to move forward whenever it happens, I think we're doing what we can to avoid some risks. Some of the votes we're having could say not legitimate. So I think from a risk standpoint, going a special election route, we're doing the best we can to avoid some risks of big problems happening. And also just say from a cost perspective, the towns gave us the SRT funds, $127,000. We could have put that towards our assessment. I would say just take the money. And my recommendation is just take the money off the table. Don't make the towns. It's $3,000 to $4,000 on a $17 million budget. They provided $127,000. Didn't ask for any of that to offset their budget. I think we'll just make that a non-issue. And probably gonna be enough work to do it anyways. Just try to remove some of the obstacles you have.
Yeah. We're gonna need the support anyways to make it happen, so. I would agree with that. Comfortable with that? Yeah. Okay. So we're in agreement that I will start the process moving forward with working towards special election. All right, so I will, I'll try, I'll add that as an agenda item in each school committee meeting to provide an update of where we stand on those things. Obviously, from a support perspective, any support each one of us can do in our communities with our select boards and those folks that play a role in this is a big thing. And then when the time comes, I'll probably ask everybody to play a role in calling and emailing our state representatives. Towns did that quite a bit for us this first go around, so we should probably try to do that as well. Good there? Great. Thank you. Okay, moving through item number 8, with our resignation comes the filling of Angela's seat. We went through our process of conducting interest, and we had one community member from Berlin interested in the opportunity. You all had a chance to see her letter of interest and resume via email and our drive. So I would like to introduce Julie Lee. She is our one committee member who's up for potential appointment to the open seat. So Julie, if you could just give us an introduction to yourself and why you're interested in the position.
Great, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm trying to speak loud enough. Okay, my name is Julie Lee. I've been a resident of Berlin for 11 years. Can you hear me? Okay. My husband and I have 4 children. We have a 7th grader, a 5th grader, a 4th grader, and a 3rd grader. And so for the past 7 years, I've been volunteering in different capacities in Berlin, through recreation, through the PTO, through sports. And now that my kids are aging, they're at the upper now level of the elementary school and moving to the middle, and the year after next, our oldest will be going to the high school. I was thinking about ways to use my time to serve the community. And the school committee came up. And I thought it would be a good way to continue to serve Berlin and now Boylston. I'm going to tell a really quick story, because I know you guys have a long agenda. So I had a job in Rosendale, and it was at the correctional facility for adjudicated teen boys, which I put on my resume. But what I took out of that job was quality education matters. Here were these boys, ages 13 to 18, living on the streets, essentially, committing crimes, and then they would come to our facility for 1 to 4 years, depending on the crime they committed, right? So I taught pre-algebra and algebra in this facility. And I would pre-test the boys before any unit, naturally, which is what the teacher did, and they failed miserably. But then I taught whatever it was that I was teaching, and then when I gave the assessment, they did exceedingly well. But it wasn't that they weren't smart enough, it's just that their quality of education wasn't good. It wasn't good enough, it wasn't even close. So when I left that job, I've always had in my head that quality education matters, because it can take a kid, any kid, and keep them going on that path, or it can also take those kids that maybe aren't on that path and can be really impactful for them. So why I would want to sit on school committees is because I believe in quality public education, and I believe in good people, and I think that good people can drive some really good things. So I want to help to preserve and improve the school system. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Yes?
Any questions from your committee members? Lori?
So Julie, as a member of the school committee, sometimes you have to take your personal opinions and put them on the side, and you have to go with the will of what the community wants, and they don't always match. what I was curious about is, are you able to separate your personal views from the will of the community, and how are you gonna keep your finger on the pulse of what the community wants?
I think that's a great question. I think, you know, it's hard when you have passion, right? And the passion you have doesn't meet maybe the majority or the needs of, in this particular case, the community, right? However, when you make a commitment to serve, you can't always go with what your passion is, because we have to support the thoughts and the passion of the people that we're serving. And I think that's public interest and that's public service, right? And we sometimes have to put what we really want aside. Well, I would like to think that what the community, I would align my thinking with what the community thinks. I say that I think that I would do that. I think I answered the question. Did I get it all? Was it 2 parts? Okay.
A question?
Okay.
Julie?
Yeah.
Actually, I don't have a question because Lori took my question.
Okay.
Because,
That's all right.
I was gonna say, I believe I was asked that same
Wait,
question.
did I ask my
Oh, great, great,
So I was
great.
gonna, yeah, let you know, but,
That's okay.
so with that said, I mean, speaking of the election, we always hear a lot of feedback from the community about what the community should do, shouldn't do. I'm sure Jeff hears it, you know, we hear it everywhere. So when I was asked that question by Lori back in December, I kind of had a similar feeling to that. I was wondering how you would react, or how I would react to that feedback that we got from the community. Luckily, more positive than negative feedback, right? But you are the one that decided to step in front of that firing squad tonight, and nobody else. I thank you for that. And since Lori took my question, I'm just going to leave it at that.
I was excited to see your name come forward, because when I was thinking about who in Berlin would be a good person replacing you, actually came to my mind. But I didn't like solicit anyone, because I felt like someone who really wants to do it needs to come forward of their own volition. So I just think you'd be a perfect person for the position. I've watched you in action over the years. You're just very committed, very diplomatic, very open-minded. So I'm appreciative of that. And I think the question I have for you too is, I'm hoping that our committee members in the future, after the pandemic lifts, that they become a little more involved in the conferences, go to the conferences in November, going to the Summer Institute that Massachusetts Association of School Committee puts on. There's a District 4, which encompasses our towns, periodically has a meeting like once or twice a year. How open are you to doing some of those sort of state level, community level things with your colleagues, school committee members across the state, things like that? Is your schedule allowing you to do some of that?
Yeah, as long as I had, you know, if I knew ahead of time, of course, then definitely. I think it's a great idea, because then there would be so much learning there, right? Happening in that process. It sounds perfectly brilliant. Absolutely.
I think that's a good topic for all of us, probably. For a future school committee, and maybe even a potential topic for a future school committee poll. So yeah, that's a great question. Susan, did you have a question?
Hi, Julie. Hi. I was wondering how experiencing the district and the school committee's response to COVID this past year has informed your perceptions of the role of the school committee and your interest in serving.
So I think the reactions from the community did push me more onto the school committee, the interest in serving. What I mean by that is, you know, for well, let me preface it with this. I think you did a most remarkable job with this past year, with COVID, and your role in keeping the staff and the students and families safe and continuing to keep the kids educated. I mean, it's just a hard role for the administration. And I think everyone involved in that process really did a great job. I think it's very easy for people to share their displeasure with how the cookie will crumble, without, you don't necessarily understand everything that happens in the background, right? And there were times that I was really saddened by how the community responded to things that were happening with decisions that were being made. Because of it, they were such hard decisions, and it was all rooted in good, you know, for the good of the staff and the good of the kids. But I don't think it was always received well, and that bothered me. We have two great communities, but they were very angry at times. And I said, I think, you know, that serving would be a great thing, because, you know, I can have conversations to, you know, I have 4 children, you know, we know a lot of age groups, right? So when people are talking, you know, it's easy to calm the masses. They're easier, you know, to calm the masses when they're on the sidelines of the message. You know,
Yeah, another question I have is just, are there any particular ways that you have or have prepared for being on the school committee, or in what ways might be helping with what you anticipate to be challenging?
The ways that I prepared to be on the school committee, I would say specifically no. I've worked on committees before. I've worked with budgets. I'm the chair of our recreation committee, so I'm familiar with town budget and how all of that works. As far as the school committee, I don't know. I mean, I know the mission statements, I know the goals, I know the roles and responsibilities, but I don't know, as far as preparing, no, I don't know that. I love to learn, though. I'm interested in learning it all, but it's fascinating. So I'll just over time, I'll just have to learn. You
Are
know.
there particular ways we can be most helpful to you?
No, I think I just have to listen. I wish I had, you know, sat for 5 months with Angela before, so I could learn, but it's okay. I'll just, you know, learn as I go, and any information I get. I think the suggestion that you made about, you know, going to conferences that's so smart, because that's how I'll be able to learn things. You know. Thank you. Yes, you will.
Thanks to Angela, our onboarding process.
Yes.
And the ability to gain that information is much more accessible. So it's another great thing to be behind. I just have one final, one of my famous statements / questions. I say a statement, and I think there's a question in somewhere. I'm just piggybacking off all the questions and kind of some things that you said, right? You're a passionate person, you want to bring passion to the world, you brought passion to other things that you've done in the past. And, some of the folks, you know, Susan talked about kind of the community and the response to the COVID stuff and all that stuff, right? One of the things that you almost have to start to believe and understand is the removing of passion from these things, right? And particularly when you start looking at things like social media and that type of stuff. I traditionally am a person who sees something that I disagree with on social media, and I have a desire to respond to that right there, right, and provide my opinion, right? But that's not, you know, I know we're school committee members when we're here, and we're not necessarily school committee members, you know, when we're not in quorum outside of here, but you are always a school committee member. Every time you go, you're at the sport field. I see you there all the time. Anytime you go there, you're going to be, particularly nowadays with everything going on, you're a school committee. And when there's a string on Facebook and social media about school committee or school committee stuff, when you respond to that, if you respond to that, you're a school committee member. Even though you could be a parent, it's you're you always gotta kind of have that and think about that. And, you know, for some of us, and some of us have talked about this in the past, you know, the ability to take yourself out of some of those groups and some of that stuff, right? Or the ability to use some of that as information, just information gathering, not necessarily the need to respond, right? And take time to respond. So I really, that's sort of my statement. The question really is how do you feel about, you know, that type of stuff when you just, you know, moving forward, the ability to sort of kind of pull yourself out of some of that stuff from a passionate perspective and start looking at it maybe from the school community perspective?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think that like you said, you just need to have to remove yourself. And I think Facebook is toxic at its core. So I think when those threads come up, even participating in reading them, I think is toxic also because it will just feed the passion, right? And then we're human, so we will want to respond, but like you said, you can't because you are a school committee member and you just don't want to get into that. Even on the sidelines of soccer, or, you know, if a parent, you know, approaches me about something, you know, I think it's best to even say, oh, you know, just put in an email, or, you know, that can be discussed with the board, you know, rather than. But I think it is a fine line because you are a community member, right? We certainly can't, there's things that certainly cannot get discussed, right? But then you also are, you know, these are your friends, these are your friends' parents, you know, these are your colleagues. So it is a fine line to walk. But I think the best way to do that is just remove yourself. I think it's most effective way to do that.
So we struggle with this in school committee, right? Social media it's a valuable tool for providing information, gaining information. It needs to be utilized in certain ways. And you're right, you are outside of school committee, you are an independent community member, and you have the ability to do, you know, some of that stuff. And it's just one of those things that I try to remind people. It's just, you know, you gotta be mindful, right? Of kind of, you know, even though you're not in the school committee role at that time, that hat's not on. You know, it's one of those things that you have to be mindful of what the future might bring. So, thank you.
So can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Yeah, do you find that community members are mindful of that with you as community members if you're at a, you know, crossing or if you're at a maybe for piano lessons or something? Or do you find for the most part that people do step forward?
I mean, I have a responsibility.
Sometimes,
Yeah.
I get people that approach me all the time, start talking, and say, you need to address, you put it in a people.
Yeah.
Let's do it, so. Who said it?
I think too, like if the topic is something the school committee already voted on, you could say what the vote, you have, even if you voted against it, you like collectively would be in support of it because the committee voted in support, so you would say that. And you wouldn't talk about I was against it, but you'd say, here's how the committee voted and here's why. And instead of that new stuff on the agenda that they want to do, again, it's kind of like going back to the chain of command, you know, we direct them to chain of command, Jim, email. But I think it's hard because you want people to approach you with how they feel about stuff, because how else are we going to get community feedback? But yes, you're just going to have a thick skin, which I think you have, and walk that line, which you've got to walk. And, you know, and sometimes you just have to tell people, especially if something controversial going on, like, you know, there's background information that I can't share with you, but the school committee has made the best decision with the information they have. You know, and friends and family and peers, you know, parents, they'll accept that.
Yeah.
They understand that there's stuff you know that you can't share, even if it's your best friend or your kid. If boy, those kids are really, come on, mom.
No more homework.
Yeah.
Julie, one of the things that I really like about you is you're very balanced. You're passionate, but you're logical. You're not emotional. And I see that really helping you on those sidelines. And I do what he says a lot. I'm always encouraging people. I don't care what their view is. Email all of us. Let us all know. Share what you're thinking. that's how we know. Otherwise, all we know is blips and little pieces that we hear here and there. But I think your personality is suited for that kind of interaction. I feel confident that you can handle it well.
Yeah, to answer your question, no, I don't think enough people do that, but that could just be my experience in, 4 months, but I wish people would do what Lori said more often. So, if there are those at home, do it more often.
I totally agree with all, I agree with all that. I found publicly, people are pretty respectful. Like, I've been approached around information, it's more informational purposes, that type of stuff, and I, handled it this way. My thing, I encourage people on social media and in other ways to reach out directly instead of those avenues. My big thing and my concern always with social media stuff, people are entitled to their opinion. That's a forum for that to happen, a forum to share information. My concern is when I get concerned about when I read that stuff or see it, it's the continued sharing and building upon incorrect information, right? And we have thoughts and opinions start to become facts, which aren't accurate. And that could be resolved very easily by those individuals reaching out directly to a school committee member to get the information, the actual information, right? And we as a committee try to maintain a response policy. We all have the right to respond and do things that we want to do. We try to keep somewhat of a decorum and response policy when it comes to citizens. But I just encourage people to, instead of continue to propagate incorrect information, take an opportunity to reach out and call anyone. I tell people to call me. I give my cell phone number. I give my direct email. Email me if you want those answers. But I'm not going to get engaged in a forum that's inappropriate or illegal because we're a school community, right? So there's other things you have to do. We answered your question.
Yes, I concur.
Any other final questions?
I find it ridiculous that I'm interviewing you while I'm looking at this resume. So,
Well said.
I am not gonna have any questions. So, if I have questions, I have one question. Everybody knows that I'm a big advocate for the arts,
Yes,
right? And based on your resume, I'm sure if I ask this question, are you an advocate for the arts?
yes,
Okay, that's all.
it's a resounding yes, yes. Good question.
Okay, all right, so now would be typically the uncomfortable part if we were in an uncomfortable situation, where we would deliberate in the meeting, that's that process, that's how we have to do it from a legal perspective, so, close the question, the interview perspective, he said the puzzle, so we're now in deliberation, so is there any questions, concerns, discussion, as it relates to Julie and her potential appointment for Angeles? Hearing none, okay, do I have, I will entertain a motion, then if someone has a motion.
I have a motion that we approve Julie Lee for the school committee vacancy.
Second.
Both? Any more questions, concerns, deliberation? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
So from a process standpoint, you will need to, between now and our next meeting, make an appointment with the town clerk to be sworn in.
Okay,
And then once you're sworn in, you can, you can start to get your email address and start the process of the onboarding process. As part of Angela's building out that process, we have mentors now. I was going to assign a mentor, but I had one step up and volunteer. Lori wanted to step up and be your mentor. So I'm going to appoint Lori to be Julie's mentor through the process. And I think that's all I got to cover from that perspective.
so just between now and next meeting, it's what?
Yeah, I mean, I would do it, I would recommend doing it sooner rather than later, because you're gonna want to start getting your email, getting access to the drive, being part of,
Okay,
the emails that you get as agendas and stuff like that. So I would recommend trying to do it sooner rather than later. Your first official meeting will be next
Okay,
The
thank you.
the town clerk will also ask you to take a mandated conflict of interest on training certification also, which you probably will do early.
Okay,
Yeah, that's a state mandate, so that's, sit down at your desk one day, you get some stuff to do. It does take a little bit of time.
Yeah, it is.
It's a little, cumbersome. Take a little bit of time.
okay, great, thank
Now,
you.
now you're already on, so you can't do it.
Right. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, I really appreciate it.
You're welcome to stay if you'd like, if you don't have the time this evening,
I actually don't have the time this evening,
that's okay.
just because I wasn't planning on being here, but thank you.
Yeah, it was last, it was a little late, so.
That's okay,
all good.
okay. Thank you so much.
Okay, all right. Leave it out. We're moving into our report section. Mr. Zang.
So I'm going to report on the goals. Number one. Start. Okay, goal number one, on May 18, 2021, superintendent administrative leadership team will be prepared to bring forward to the staff a common understanding of equity as it relates to all students, defining what equity looks like in our school district, and addressing areas in which we have determined to engage collective from the state and from the district, or where there are needs for improvement. Okay, action step one. Superintendent will engage a consultant with expertise in subject on the subject of equity and guidance leading discussions, book studies, and exercises to better understand the meaning of equity in all aspects of education. The superintendent has engaged in services of Teacher 21 for the 2020-2021 school year. We hired Dr. Naja Riley and Dr. Chris Taylor. Dr. Naja Riley is a professor at William James College and works for Teacher 21. Chris Taylor has worked with the Department of Ed and also with Teacher 21. We've had two meetings, one on March 2nd, one on April 27th, and there will be additional meetings in May, June, and August. Superintendent, action step number two, the superintendent will direct all administrators to share the goal as part of their annual evaluation. That has been done. The goal one is the longest one, so after this one, it's a little more quickly. The superintendent will oversee and support the principals in the planning and implementation of school-wide activities involving staff and students that demonstrate at least one aspect of equity, and that will become the foundation for future work in the area. Given the timeline of our work on equity to extend to the summer of 2021, the superintendent will collaboratively plan with the administrators as part of their retreat work with Teachers 21 and planning and implementation of school-wide activities involving staff and students during the 2021-2022 school year, which is next year. So we didn't quite get to that one, just the timing of it didn't allow us, and but the original goal, we didn't think we were gonna have summer work, but, the goal is now extended to the summer.
Jeff, you could speak up a little, bit,
Okay.
please.
Let's see. The administrative leadership team will participate in these key professional development activities that will strengthen the shared understanding of equity. The superintendent and administrative leadership team have participated in at least three professional development activities to strengthen their understanding of equity. This includes administrative book study, webinars on culturally responsive teaching and degree presented by Zaretta Hammond, and deepening your equity impact webinar presented by Gary Howard. 3 collaborative work with Teacher 21 consultants, and 4 participation and digital literacy science advisory council hosted by the Education Development Center. The focus of the council is to create a pathway for all students K-12 to be able to access computer science courses. And we talked to you about that. We're implementing this in grade 7 and grade 8 computer science program. I'll skip to action step number 7, which was the superintendent will work with the director of finance and operations and the director of curriculum to budget year 2 equity goal activities. That was done by mid-year. Let's see, number 6, the superintendent will provide a final report of the work done by the administrative leadership team in the area of equity that includes action steps related to staff and parent involvement for the subsequent year. So I'll be my final report. The superintendent and administrative leadership team embarked on a journey to define the meaning of equity as applied to our district and students who serve during the 2020-2021 school year. To begin the work, we launched an administrative book study using a recently published book by Forward Publishers, Breakthrough Leadership, 6 Principles Guiding Schools Where Inequity is Not an Option, written by Alan Blankenstein and Marcus Newsom. The contents of the book offer its readers primarily those in educational leadership roles, an opportunity to better understand the meaning of equity and to visualize the pandemic as an opportunity for transformation in our schools. This book is just published and it also references the pandemic, so it was timely, and that a lot of the focus points had to do with opportunities that we have related to equity because of the pandemic. So, the administrative leadership team met for 1-hour book study sessions on 4 separate weeks between January 28th and March 4th. During these sessions, the team responded to questions related to chapters in the book related to acknowledging the culture of our school, who we are and what we are about, the structure, the organizational system in place, the process, how we move students through the school system to ensure that they're successful. In session 1, we focused on the responsibility of leadership to move the district forward in creating an equitable environment for all students to learn. During the session, the team learned more about the difference between adaptive leadership and technical leadership. One of the leadership team's most meaningful conversations and its deepest dive revolved around the definition of equity as it was defined in the book as compared to each individual's personal understanding and biases. As a team, we challenged and questioned one another on what it meant for students to be successful. Who determined that the student was successful? How was that measured, interpreted, and understood? The book discussion was followed by a webinar assignment in which the team was expected to watch Loretta Cameron present on culturally responsive teaching in the brain in preparation for the following session. The administrative team also focused on relational trust and team building in relation to capacity building within the school district. During this session, we responded to the following essential questions. How do we engage our staff in creating a trusting environment? How do we value their work? Do we honor each individual? We recognize that what we do and how we treat one another as adults is reflected in how we treat students. You'll see this theme of building capacity in our district. We focused on it for the last 3 years, and it's a big part of that equity work. From here, we've moved into the 4 pillars of an equitable learning community as outlined in the book. During these sessions, the team examined the current mission and vision statements and goals that we have had in place for the last several years. We're going to revisit the mission and vision statements, but we will wait till we do more of the work on equity instead of just writing it first and then doing the work, which makes sense. And in subsequent sessions of the book study, the administrative leadership team considered and discussed the essential questions related to family and student engagement. What are some ways that you have reached out to the families and community recently? What are some ideas that you would like to consider trying? What community partners does the school district currently have? And what are we working on together? The team agreed on three key understandings that principals would plan to take forward into their buildings next year in discussions with staff. 1, mutual understanding based on empathy and recognition of shared interests. 2, meaningful involvement of families and communities in a variety of school activities. And 3, regular outreach and communication to families and community. They also focused on breakout sessions and technical changes that could be made in each of the schools led by the principal and overseen by the superintendent of schools. At the conclusion of the book study session, the administrative leadership team was able to take away a shared understanding that an alignment with the central office of the schools is critical to forming an equitable environment for all students. In which a quote from the book resonated with all parties related to the building sustainable leadership capacity. The quote is, we need to develop sustainable leadership capacity that enables school cultures to thrive despite challenges, including the transition of leadership. That's especially important in our district, which is very small, has a small leadership team, and we're all probably closer to retirement than we are on the other end of our careers. From here, the plan is for them to seek systematic changes to our districts over the next 3 to 5 years, including 1, the expansion of K-12 programming in computer science, 2, changes in teaching and learning practices that align directly to the greater needs of our student population and community, and 3, opportunities for a greater number of students, particularly those who fall into the most compromised categories, access to honors and advanced placement courses in the middle and high school. These action steps directly connect to Goal 2A of our District 5-year improvement plan, in which we have stated inclusive practices, work with building principals on identified areas of inequity, and develop an action plan for improvement. As part of the equity goal, the superintendent also hired as consultants Dr. Najee Riley and Dr. Chris Taylor from Teachers 21 to lead the administrative team for a series of exercises expanding the key principles of equity as outlined in the book into a more realistic understanding of the current condition of the Berlin-Boylston School District. At the first meeting, the superintendent described the goal of the superintendent and the leadership team to be increasing educational equity in the district. The superintendent emphasized that not only was equity the basis for success in our schools, but he intended to create a long-lasting culture of equity that would be sustained in the schools and the central office moving forward. Again, if you notice, since the last 4 paragraphs, all been related to building capacity in the schools to make sure that this effort, this equity effort, is long-lasting and sort of outlives us as administrators in this district. Let's see. During the first session, the team focused on adult social and emotional competency, breaking down the meaning of educational equity. The consultants also led the team through the beginnings of the data review process using the MCAS in 2019. In closing the session, the team defined equity in our school district as providing opportunities and access for all students, B, raising achievement, narrowing achievement gaps by socioeconomic levels, gender, disabilities, and racial ethnicity. And C, getting to a place of non-predictability in which the educators would not prematurely predict student outcomes based on the limitations perceived within these specific student-identified groups. Due to the lateness of the start date of this goal, and as a result of the pandemic, the superintendent and leadership team will continue to work with Teachers 21 through the summer of 2021 with the additional meetings in May, June, and August, and we'll continue our work for next year. Also, and it speaks to these conferences, Carol and I have invited, along with our consultants, to participate in an activity, in an equity panel at the joint MASC-MASS conference this year. And we probably have one school committee member on there. We're not going to tell the person who it is yet, but we probably will have one. We'll have to get a little more involved in our work. And at first, we thought, well, we just started this work, what really do we have to offer? And the answer is simple, that there's a lot of districts that have, who look like us demographically, socioeconomically, and they haven't started this work because they don't necessarily see a need for it. So really the the workshop would be just to talk to districts like us who might not have started, they might want to start, don't know where to start, and just for us to go through the process we've gone through so far. So, again, we're hoping that happens, they have submitted their proposal for us to do that, and also, just ironically, about a month ago, a group of students, 3 students from the high school, seniors, emailed us and wanted to have a meeting with myself and Carol and 2 principals from the high school and 2 teachers to talk about equity and some of the inequities that they believe they've experienced in their time in school. And it's unfortunately the seniors. And so, we talked about what their next steps would be to not leave all those years on the table, to actually be able to do something. And so they're going to meet with the 2 teachers who are obviously there because they trusted them. And so they're going to work with those 2 teachers and talk through some of these issues. But also, there are other groups in the school who are doing sort of similar work, who have similar interests. And they're going to work with them to try to kind of have a unified message. And hopefully next year we can get those groups involved in our work, which is what we intended to do. I had no idea naively that students are actually working on this stuff. And they see it, believe me, an entirely different perspective than you do, which is good. So when we move into next year, we'll finish up our administrative stuff this summer. Next year, try to move this forward to the schools and involve students, student groups, and the teachers. We know we at least got 2 teachers who run that fall who want to focus in this area, probably haven't had a chance to so far. So that's goal number 1. We got a lot of work done, we think, despite a late start. And so we're looking forward to the summer work. We'll do a lot of it in our summer retreat, which we really didn't have an opportunity to do last year. So. Let's go on number 1. Was there any questions before going on to number 2?
I have a question about goal number 1. That when you were just talking about the phone conversation with the students and the teachers, is that what happened on April 30th? Because I had a question of what you meant on your graph of dates. With university meeting, what was that? Was that phone call?
Yeah, I believe that was on the 30th, right? Yes.
Oh, all right, thank you.
Yeah.
Jeff, could you just, I wasn't here when you set this goal, started this goal. What was the issue in the district that was inequitable leading up to a great focus?
There wasn't really anything that stuck out, except that, we know just from going to school, there's inequities, and I guess I had made some observations in the school, that the school is really not much different from others in that, there were little things here and there, you see kids sitting alone, things like that, so we always wanted to apply. Why is the student sitting alone? We bought these KN95 because they're really good, but you can't read out of them. So I should have worn my one with the hole here. So it wasn't anything, Mike, but except just observations that I made when I walked through the school that, these are things I've always wondered about. And, then you're the superintendent, you're like, okay, now I can do something about it, or just, maybe there's nothing to do anything about it. But I suspect there is, because I made those observations, kids sitting alone, or just those kind of things you would think of as normal. And then these students, now I don't know what they had written down there. I said, go to the teachers first, and talk to them. But they did say things like, just, we don't know if things are taught the way they should be. I don't know what that means, and I don't know, but I don't take the courses either. So when we started the goal, it was just that, to just see where we are, just see where we are, and sometimes on the surface things look differently. But as we move forward, I suspect it's once we get kids involved, and once we get teachers involved, that we'll hear what they perceive as inequities, if there are. I mean, there were a couple things the kids said that I won't repeat, but that I was really taken aback by.
Well, two things in your report kind of stuck out to me. One was, teachers were predicting results of students depending on the, I don't know exactly how you do it.
Yeah, you know what
Well, that was one thing that stood out. And then, was there actually something holding back students from being, or from accessing the honors classes? Those are two things.
well, there always is, you know, I mean, and
That this equity, like, what specifically is being addressed to fix that? What was the cause?
well, I think in any school I've been in any district, you know, 7 districts now, there's always a process to get in, to get into AP. So, and you probably remember from high school, you know, a grade from your previous course, and then a recommendation from the teacher. Now, I know in the last, since probably 2008, there was a effort, there was privately funded, and then another one in 2012, 2013, probably 2013, I remember, was funded by the state to get more students into AP. And it's always the same thing, whether they're gonna fail. Well, in these two big efforts, they've been able to increase the numbers significantly, and they didn't fail. And then it goes back to this issue of, well, what's success? What does it mean to succeed? If you didn't get a grade that you needed to get in that class, and I say this as a former AP teacher, and I say, well, you know, Mike, you got a C in college, Cam, I don't know how this, you say, listen, I really want to take it. I say, okay. So you get it, and you don't do great on the AP test, or you get another C. That might be success for you, because maybe getting a C and, or even a D in an AP class might be, you might have to work harder to do that than you would to get an A and some lower level course. So I'm not saying there is anything wrong, but I think we all make sometimes predictions about students. And, you know, it's not to point fingers at anybody, but it happens. I think there are biases, biases that aren't explicit, that we all bring to the table. And that's just what we want to explore. And again, not to point fingers, just to say, you know, are we doing those things? If we are, is it hurting our students? We're not doing it, it's not hurting our students, that's fine. But we should look at it.
So you found that those were happening, so now you're putting a plan to.
We don't know. That work was done when we were working with our consultant, who said, you know, this is one of the things when you do the equity work, this is one of the things that we're going to be looking at. And in my head, I'm thinking, well, okay, I look at AP. As a former AP teacher, I did that. I said, you know, I don't think I need to do this. Now, I don't know how if that's if it would have worked or not. So I know these things exist. So when the consultants are saying this, yeah, no, I know this happens. You know. So again, it might not be blatant. It's not like saying to a student, you know, you're not really that bright. It's not that explicit. So, I don't know. Like next year at this time, I'll probably have a better. Better way to, I'll have a better answer for you.
Just to build off that one notch, Jeff, and you may have answered this, so forgive me if you did. But one of your pieces of evidence for the school one was to identify specific evidence-based targets for improving equity in the district. Did you reach that point?
No, we didn't reach that point, except just individually we did, but we didn't get back to that point in the consultation piece. So we got to the point where the consultant said, talk about non-predictability. Okay, and then each of us had stories in our own head that we shared with each other. Okay, I know when I was a teacher, I did this, or I saw this. But we didn't apply it to anything that's going on here right now.
So when would you expect to get to the identifying evidence-based come to agreement after we've done all that work, filtering out, and reflecting on, the biases, implicit biases people bring into the work. When do you feel you can get to the point where you can shield that and you can identify, you've looked at the data
Yeah,
and you've identified very clear targets for improving equity?
I'm hoping next year, but it's this is a big goal than I thought it was gonna be, and it's a lot more work than I thought it was gonna be. Yeah, I think we all came in with our own idea about what equity is, and have learned a lot, so we're hoping next year, but I can see this being, maybe a 2-year official goal, but it could be a 5-year project.
Okay, that's helpful, and I'm happy to hear you say that, because I think it is a big goal, and it's complicated, and there's a lot of very subtle factors that impact equity. And it sounds like you're planning to do a bit of a deep dive on that and give it the time it needs.
Yeah, yeah. I know, there's much work is being done, and, when I think about it, we really haven't, we haven't got to these things like Mike was asking, we haven't reached that yet, Well, don't even know how to reach it yet.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. Anything else? Goal 2. By May 18, 2021, the superintendent will establish no more than 12-member advisory board representing members from each of the 3 schools. The purpose of the board will be to provide the superintendent with ongoing support in the form of information, feedback, ideas, and perspectives on areas related to the school and district improvement and changes within the community. These areas specifically include COVID-19 enrollment, physical space available in schools, growth in the community, and issues and concerns related to student equity. Okay, action step 1, the superintendent will establish an advisory board to include parents, staff, administrators, community members, student representatives, and school committee member by November 2020. The superintendent established the advisory council by January 2021 to include 4 parents, 1 community member, 1 building administrator, 2 central office administrators, and 1 student representative. Action step number 2, the superintendent will set the schedule for the meetings to occur no less than 3 times between November and June. The superintendent will maintain an agenda and minutes of the meetings. The meeting dates were as follows: February 24, March 24, and April 28. So we got a late start on it, but we were able to meet that goal of getting those meetings in. Let's see. The superintendent will indicate to the school committee any actions taken as a result of the recommendations of the advisory board. That's part of my summary. The establishment of the Groveland Morrison Advisory Board was delayed from its original deadline of November 2020 due to unavoidable circumstances related to the pandemic. By January 2021, the superintendent had all board members in place, except one that was added, one additional member that was added in late March and attended 1 meeting. But will be with us next year. At the first meeting held on February 24th, the superintendent defined the purpose of the board as serving as an informal and advisory capacity to the superintendent of schools on all matters related to the district. The superintendent also identified 2 main focus areas for the 2020-2021 school year, to be equity and re-entry 2.0 as it relates to full entry of students into the school since the close of schools due to COVID-19 in March 2020. At the March 24th meeting, the superintendent updated the board on potential learning gaps that would be mitigated in the fall of ESSA grant funds used for students. The superintendent also indicated that social emotional learning would be a high priority both upon the students returning to school in the spring and again in the fall of 2021. and working towards actionable steps for the district in relation to equity. The superintendent also shared with the board that the district intends to move forward with both computer science pathway in the first stage of the firing the position of internship coordinator, and I'll talk more about that in June. And at the April 28, 2021 meeting, superintendent gave the group an update on the COVID-related school closure that took place on April 16th, and also discussed COVID-related issues such as contact tracing, quarantining protocols, revised quarantine guidance, and potential COVID testing for the fall, which I'll also talk more about in June. The group briefly focused on the importance of prompt communication and its effect on social media. So, we get a late start with that group, but they do provide some really good insight. 3 of those members are also on another board that Carol and I meet with every Monday morning. So I think mostly they help us with communication to parents and, help us with timelines. So, I'll just give you one more example. We talked about some COVID testing possibly for the fall, not full testing, but targeted testing. And, this is one of the members pointed out, and I never even thought of this, that many of the COVID testing sites will probably be disappearing at some point as we start to get by the pandemic. And so to have some kind of testing available for parents that it's school-based will probably help, will be a big help to, especially for students who are possibly being quarantined, something like that. So they've been a big help in a short time. But let's go to, if anybody has any questions. Lori's on the committee.
Could I ask a question about that? What towns are the parent representatives from? Is it on the roster? I haven't saw the one on the ones. Is that right? One Berlin representative, 2 West.
Well, is she counted as a parent?
No, she's in a school committee.
School committee.
I mean, it looked to me like it's
So-
her own parent, one Wilson parent,
Yeah.
and then the rest of the staff. Pretty much. Oh, there are 2 Wilson parents. Rachel and.
Oh, no, Karen is, Boston.
So Karen,
Karen was Boston.
Yeah.
Laura's friend.
Boston. Days from.
Oh, well, it's.
Boston.
Said, is he parent? Or-
Hmm?
Was he parent or staff?
He's Karen. Yeah, he's on Monday group too. He's been working with us. He was on the original, planning for the entry last summer. So was Karen, Goshen, and Laura. Was also on. So that's a little over.
So I didn't hear the resolution of all of that down here. But I know Laura's from Berlin. Is there another representative from Berlin? Is it everything listed as Berlin? So I guess my concern is that Berlin be fully represented in there as well. In that advisory council.
Well, we got 9, we were looking for 12, so, no, 12 or less, so, it's still open. Like I said, we
Is it
just.
volunteer basis?
Yeah.
I mean, did you we solicited these members, didn't you?
Yeah, and the way we did it is, we exercised the principle. I mean, I had 3 of them that I reached out to, just because I knew them from the other one, but, the other one just came from principals.
Well, I would like to see Berlin equally represented on the advisory council. So I hope that you do that for the coming year. And I have another question on to count down, so I'll come back. Oh, I know. Why, what was your thinking behind using several members from another committee on this committee instead of going to broader representation, people who are not encountering other committees.
Well, they just give good advice.
But it's narrow, because it's the same advice you might hear on the other committee.
Yeah,
So, again, I guess I would.
well, no, well, not really, because,
Different topics.
yeah, I mean,
But different-
there's a different focus on Monday.
I guess I would really encourage you to diversify on the advisory council and get some perspectives that are new to you. So that you grow the perspectives that are coming into your space. Just, have the potential to more broadly impact your thinking.
Yeah. Well, we still have room, so if you're out there and you're watching, you need a few more people.
If we start with these people.
The unfortunate,
It was a tough year.
the unfortunate nature of volunteerism in itself is traditionally the same people volunteer. So I agree getting this broad spectrum is an important thing. I think it should be, but just in nature, if he says recommendations came from principals, I'm assuming John Thompson made more than one recommendation. But most likely those individuals not take them up on that opportunity, right?
I don't know, I think that, I don't want to
Well, that's
look from
true.
the assumption that we can't get volunteers. I think invitations are powerful, and I'm sure this is not a high demand committee. It doesn't meet that often, and it doesn't have a lot of tasks to do in between meetings, so I think that this is very possible to get volunteers who.
Yeah, well, we'll try. I mean,
Help people step forward.
it's not, we're not trying to keep them off. I mean, we'll certainly try. We sent out quite a few, we sent out quite a few, and then we sent it out again. And,
It may be partly related to the demands of the COVID year.
well, I think so. I might be part of it too.
So I hope that you'll continue to pursue that for next year.
We will.
Angela, you found through the parents, regardless of what town they're from, there's 4 parents on this committee, is that what you said? More than numbers. So it's a 12-member committee,
9 members,
right, but it says here, it's no more than 12 members.
no one.
For parent and community engagement, even with 9 members, there's only 4 parent and community members, the rest is who's staff. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, we have Carol, Sal,
Yeah.
Sally.
I don't know, it seems to me like parent and community engagement committee would have more parent and community than staff. But that goes back to volunteers.
Yeah. Well, we're not,
It's tough to.
we want
tough
to
to-
have.
Yeah, no, it's tough to meet the goal if there is.
Do we need a PSA? Please send pictures to parents questions at bbrsd.org.
It's tough to meet the goal if you don't have parents and community on the parent and community.
It is a good point, though, maybe now timing wise, asking with vaccinations and some of this stuff changing, you might get more interest, so it probably is a good time to maybe
Yeah, well, it won't be a goal next year, but the committee, the advisory council will stay in place. You know, it's a good way for me to get information about what's going on in the community, so.
I have just one other question about this, the advisory group, and that's, what percentage of the meeting time would you say, obviously approximately, you are sharing information with the committee versus the percentage of time you're soliciting ideas and input from the committee to something you're thinking about?
I don't know, maybe 50/50, depends on the meeting, you know. Like, I would say maybe the second meeting, see, we always ask the questions in advance, like if they want some information, so. If they want answers to something, there's usually more input from them because it's something they're interested in. So, if we have an open agenda so they can they can put topics on there that we want to talk about. So, again, we're just starting to form this. And I would say it's 50-50. Depending on who brings the issue to the table.
Can I respond to that at all? Just as a school committee member, I find Jeff to be extremely relaxed, very open. He especially questioned Sydney Fuller, who's a student. She gave a lot of great feedback. She was extremely helpful. And I found that a lot of the conversation just was very natural, and it was a genuine back and forth. And the way you run it, everybody feels very. I mean, I feel like for myself, it feels very comfortable. If you wanted to bring something up, that you're a very good listener and you engage. So I would feel comfortable saying that it's 50-50. That if someone wants to talk, and you're always asking questions. It's not just presenting. You're asking questions, and a lot of great discussions come out of that.
Well, it's good to hear. I mean, I think sometimes parents, especially, they don't think they have something to add. But they don't realize that it's something I don't know. They think I do, so, I do try to ask questions to try to get some response, because they do have a lot of great information. Sydney does too.
It's just been tremendous.
Yeah. Doesn't hurt that she just smiles on the group.
But, yeah,
Hey, Jeff, just for my own understanding, once you update this community on whatever information it is that people want, are they supposed to go back and talk to the community and discuss it, disseminate it, or how does that?
No, we haven't put anything out like that. It's really just for them. The goal is for them to advise me on things that, normally I wouldn't have insight to. And so it tends to be more about things they're seeing in the community, or like if I talk to them about COVID, they can, give me some feedback on what they're hearing, how fast I should get communications out, things like that, things along that line.
They're not like in the core here, just sort of superintendent updated on, superintendent updated, there isn't much of community updated you on. I think at least if I'm reading.
Yeah, well, again, I think that they don't realize they have a lot to offer, so a lot of times it's, I've had things like, it was a member of the advisory who wanted to talk about how we can mitigate student loss, academic loss. So that came from school committee, an advisory board member. But I don't think they're quite at the point where they realize that they have a lot to offer. So it's a series, like Lori said, of me asking, so here's a topic, and then asking questions to try to get them to respond and giving their, like a parent perspective on it. I mean, I know the school perspective, but you get a parent perspective on it. So you're right, there is a lot of that. So hopefully, that will change at some point.
I also feel like our third meeting was our most successful. I think there's a comfort level too. Like, I think people don't realize that it's not you necessarily presenting in them. It's getting past it, being on Zoom and seeing yourself and seeing everybody else versus if we were all just together in one room. But I felt like they've become more and more of a big conversation as we've gone along. And so I see that moving forward. Even with the addition of our newest committee member, there's a lot more discussion that went on, different perspectives. So.
Right. Yeah, and she got right involved in it.
It's great.
Once she knew she could, I think that's the other
That's what
thing.
it is.
The whole Zoom thing is, it makes that kind of familiar thing. It makes it difficult.
Could you speak a little bit about the weekly parent communication committee? How is that different? Who's on that?
That's three parents, and they were sort of, I'm sorry, they were left over from, not leftovers. They're not leftovers. The second time. No, they were a group that we've been working with for a long time. Again, they were part of the initial reentry, so They do a lot of the stuff with the Facebook, they do a lot of things with the Facebook, and so if there's anything going on out there that they think I should know about, or we should know about, they monitor that. They'll send me screenshots, I just couldn't take that piece of it, but, they'll say, maybe you need to do this, maybe you need to do that, or think about this, and this is what I'm seeing, or something like that.
And do you know if you have a parent of each child, at least of that small group?
Two from, Karen from Boylston, Dave from Boylston, Morris from Boylston.
Pushing to goal three.
Thank you. Okay. Goal number 3. But this is, this one, this was not the best year for this goal at all, because of the Zoom thing. But once I was in it, I was in it, so. Okay, so let me go through this. During the 2020, 2021, the superintendent will continue to meet with his mentors for the purpose of strengthening his leadership skills and targeting areas as noted in the 2020 evaluation, specifically presentation, communication, and agenda setting, ensuring that meeting discussions and topics addressed by the superintendent remain on task, focused, and linked to the agenda. Okay, superintendent and his mentors focus on the following areas with the intention of demonstrating growth and improvements in the first grade. Engaging the mentor in issues related to COVID-19 and regional school districts. Work with his mentor, 2, work with his mentor to create a focus and relevant school committee agenda in order to strengthen both formal and informal communication. 3, establish a monthly meeting schedule by November 2020 and report the focal topics to each session. So most of that, if you just go to the evidence, you can see that it's mostly just work where we kind of just detail what we talked about. And my mentor is executive director at Mama, so a lot of information about regional school districts that she's able to share with me, especially with COVID-19. Number 4 and 5, by May 21, superintendent, by May 2021, report on how presentation communication skills have improved this year, and whether these communication goals have been met, or how they will continue into next year. And 5, a series of self-reflections related to school committee presentations provided by the superintendent to his mentor, identifying strengths and areas in need improvement over time. So I'm going to read my self-reflections. During the past year, I've taken time to self-reflect on several aspects of my engagement with the growing boards and school committee, specifically with the goal of improving my presentation and communication skills and strengthening the meeting agenda to be more focused and relevant. These self-reflections have taken place over the 6-month period beginning in November 2020 and concluding in April 2021. While the length of time engaged in this activity has not been extensive enough to recognize patterns over time, I've been able to identify specific behaviors and situations that I do feel the need to be improved upon, as well as those in which I feel that have been evidence of success and or improvement. Again, when I wrote this goal, I thought we would be back to in person long before tonight. In order to determine the next steps, I have provided my self-reflection over a series of sequential monthly observations based upon participation and leadership in the growing world of the school committee meetings. These self-reflections appear below and are based on the responses to the following guiding questions and targeted observations of school committee structure and organization currently existing. Items I can control. Do I include too many topics in an effort to have information to report out on for the meeting? Do I get off topic in my presentation? Should I bring forward only those topics that require a formal vote by the committee? Items I cannot control. There is no formal time limit for discussion and individual comments and questions. Therefore, members are given unlimited time to speak, either during discussion or prior to votes being taken. all or most of the business related to school committee occurs at the meeting itself. Prior preparation and review of materials is not required. 3, school committee has adopted a consensus model which extends the discussion prior to a vote. Mid-cycle self-reflections, personal behavior. Although I review my presentation prior to meetings, I do get off track and tend to go longer than needed. I find that in an effort to explain my thinking, I draw upon other evidence to support my statements. In doing so, I draw away from the topic at hand and move into sharing more tangential information. This elicits comments and questions from school committee members that may or may not relate to the actual topic at hand and may hinder them from gathering enough information to make an informed decision. The discussion format, while lending itself to an open and transparent dialogue, does not necessarily lead to solving issues or matters of concern in an effective and efficient manner. Therefore, it might be easier to consider reducing the presentation, the district presentation, to a few key topics with greater focus and forethought to the information provided in anticipation of answering specific questions and moving the vote along. Situational behaviors. The current model used due to the pandemic of Zoom meetings in which the entire building working communities have access to the meeting in real time, and given the panel, including school committee members and administrators, an at-home platform from which to speak, has extended meeting times and made discussions less effective. Meetings have ranged from 1.5 to 2 hours with no set time for sessions to close. The pacing of the meeting is not tightly monitored during both the opening period allotted and the comments and during committee discussions. With the ability to Zoom from home, more parent engagement has occurred in the form of lengthy statements read to the committee and further commented upon. The results of extended participation and in-the-moment reactions have led to an increase in trolling that has occurred, at times simultaneously to the meeting, that has become both a distraction and hindrance to the purpose at hand, which is essential for the school committee to meet, discuss, and vote upon matters within their purview. We need to resume in-person meetings as soon as possible when it is safe to do so. Feedback based on discussion with my mentor. Discussions with the mentor help to focus my effort by reinforcing the idea that it is, in the end, a school committee meeting, and I only control certain parameters. It may be the full attention of the committee that all topics and related questions are fully explored in public. Also, in a pandemic year, it is not advisable to make any drastic changes which benefits are short-lived. Summary of final reflections. Goal 3, as it relates to communications during school committee meetings, has been challenging to me this year. It began as my communication goal, but quickly morphed into a general analysis of the school committee meetings conducted during the pandemic. During the period of several months, however, I recognize that I get off topic entirely too much during meeting presentations. I've concluded, based upon my discussion with my mentor, that I do so because I want to share the district's progress with the committee, but in an informal format that allows a free-flowing conversation to take place. I've learned that this is ineffective within the structure of the meeting and often consumes valuable time. It also feeds into a meeting format and lends itself to a long and drawn-out meeting time. Both for myself and for my administrative leadership team going forward, report topics will be brief, targeted, and relevant to the agenda for the meeting, except for my report. That's just long and drawn out. So that's my goal number 3. Questions?
Thank you for sharing your reflections.
And I want to thank all of you who have talked to me about the aspects of my presentation during these meetings. It's been very, very helpful. It helps me. It helps me a lot.
Questions, Jeff?
We should have a mask break, so.
We can take a mass break if you like.
Uh,
You You just told us I'm eating for too long.
I might have this goal for next year.
You want a clock, you might get a clock.
Hey, you gotta gamble there, big guy.
Well, last Bob, if you want
Go
a clock,
this year.
he's talking about budget.
It's approved, I can talk in 2 minutes.
Did you, Jeff, you had a second item?
Oh, yeah, okay, just quickly, I just wanted to give a quick COVID update. I know there were, as you know, we closed schools on April 16th, it was a Friday before vacation. So I did get a few emails, including things like, thank you for making the decisions for us. And so the first question people had was, why were there so many students? And the reason was that we didn't have a lot of cases, only a couple cases, but those students were in school a couple days. And also with the guidelines, because when we came back to school, we came back at 3 feet. And because the 6-foot guideline was still in place, not only do we if on this person who has COVID, we had to send a 3-foot person home and a 6-foot person home. A week later, the guidance changed, and so now the 3-foot person gets sent home, the 6-foot person home, and the parent gets notified. So had that been a week later, it had actually been half the students. Plus, there was a weekend event, so we had to count those students too. So it was just an unfortunate turn of events. And so the other question is, we didn't have any issues in Berlin, but because of the way we scheduled this year, we planned on having the last day of school for the teachers to be a professional development day to reflect on the year and start thinking about next year. And I think Carol talked about that in the last meeting. And so I just thought it was easier to just keep all of the schools together. Our schools typically have a high absentee rate for us, at least on that day. So when I put all that together, I thought it'd be better to just replay the whole day at the end of the year. So that's why Grove was involved with it. And another question came up about giving the number of students, which we don't do. And that's simply, it's not illegal, but there is a privacy issue. Early on in the pandemic, somebody called to give them the numbers, or they emailed me, and then the next email was, I know you gave the parent the numbers, you mind telling me what classroom it was, what grade level it was. So I thought this is not going down a good road, and eventually it would really be a violation of our HIPAA rules. So we made a decision that we were going to contact the parents, the families of the students who were involved in the incident. The other thing is numbers get posted online. We have to report to the state. Anytime we have a case, Christie reports it to the state, and sometimes those numbers are a little bit different than other numbers, which would have been another source of confusion. So just a quick update. The guidance has changed, so we don't anticipate that happening. We don't anticipate closing schools anymore, actually. Something really big would have to happen. That was just an unusual circumstance. That's it.
That's a quick, sort of follow, these questions from the last meeting. Could we do that, like, 2-sentence update on the traffic situation that we talked about?
Before you get that one, can I ask a closing? So is that why you extended the time frame for the Honto parents to decide which model?
Yeah.
Did anybody
Thank
take
you.
you up on that?
That's it. I don't know. I'm sure at least 2 did, because I got 2 emails from parents who said they had meetings with guidance. And they wanted, it was the week before, and they weren't able to do it because of everything that was going on in the school. So I'm just assuming, that's really when I started thinking I should just extend this and give them a chance to meet with guidance and do everything they have to do. So my guess is at least 2 did, and I don't know the guys. But I think it was,
That's one from full person to remote or? From
I'm not sure. I'm not sure what I'd have to look at my emails again. I can't remember. but I know they had meetings with the guidance counselor, so. I just thought, given everything that happened that week in the school, there was a lot of stuff going on here. For those cases, that happened on Tuesday, I believe it was Tuesday, it took some time, the first case at least, so. I thought I'd just extend the week, it didn't really hurt us at all, and probably help the parents, so.
You're talking about through the first Monday.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's right.
I was
Yes,
just- I'd be interested to know if any parents changed their mind after that. But not who, but the number of changes that happened between the two malls.
You mean for the extended week?
Yeah.
I'll see if I can find that, and we'll just send it just to you.
Yeah.
Well,
Thank you. Sorry.
did you just write that? Yeah. See you way ahead of me.
Yeah, so just back to the, Tohoto traffic update, just quick, 2 cents.
Yep, we haven't heard anything on the sign from the state, but I think we're in better shape. I was here, last, first week we were back, it seems to be better, and they've opened the front up, so, they would just let cars around the back, and now once, there's a couple buses that stop off in the front, once the lights go off, they stop moving, they open the front.
So
Yeah,
things are getting better.
It seems that
Would
way.
have been different. That made a big difference.
Coming in front, yeah,
When you split them up.
they split them up, so.
And I don't know what the graduation plans are, but I'm wondering, I don't know if they're inside, outside, what your plans are, but, I'm wondering if school committee, if you want school committee members to be attending graduation.
I think there's enough room for you. Yeah, we want to come, we'd like to have you. And, it's gonna be outside, and Chrissy, can we just send them you sent out a flyer for graduation, so it is gonna be outside, it says rain and shine, so that should be interesting.
Okay.
That's it, for me, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Awesome. So, you've all seen my report. Not going to read it, just a couple quick highlights. The USDA extended the free meals program, which normally is just, we're not eligible for. So next year, we're planning to continue our model of offering free meals to all students. We get reimbursed pretty close to what we would get if we had students paying. And families get a huge benefit of the free meal, so maybe instead of getting $3.50 for a Happy Meal, we might get $3.41. It's kind of a no-brainer to participate. So I just wanted to communicate that, have families hear it, it's some good news, and hopefully it helps us in the food service program as well. Second item is an FYI, there's no action needed at this time, but the pandemic's created some challenges for families, and many are struggling financially. Jeff and I have talked about, we have some unpaid balances in the district. We talked about this, we both felt strongly that we did not want to deny access to programs, like preschool, particularly for financial issues, non-payments, and typically in a normal year, we might need to do that. And I talked to a couple families and said that we're not going to do that, that we'll brief the school committee, and we'll look and try to come up with some approach to that. It might include seeking donations, might include making a recommendation to write off some balances, deferring collections timelines. So I need to check the school committee policy. I'm not sure that we necessarily need approval to do that, but I felt like it was important to communicate it publicly and give people an opportunity to express concerns either offline or online. But we're not talking about a lot of money. I think we might be talking about a few $1,000s in total. So that's where we are. And again, I just wanted to share that information. And then the last item is just informational as well. There was two conflicting figures for the $11 a cart for the Tohoto capital assessment for Berlin, the lower number that was in the chart is correct. I just wanted to put this in the record because we get audited. And they want to see a school committee vote for a certain number that comes out to our budget. So we voted as presented last time, I just wanted to have clarification on the record. No change to the approval. That's my report.
Questions, Bob, before we move on? Okay, Carol?
First, it has been so refreshing to come to work every day now and talk about teaching and learning, and to have teachers back, and that's our focus for the day, and not COVID and these other things. We're back on track again, and I'm so elated to feel that again with the students and the teachers and the energy around all of the work that they're doing. I wanted to mention in my report, in particular, the elementary literacy review committee. That's really a subcommittee of a larger group that we had before COVID began, that was looking at the big picture of literacy, pre-K through 12. And during that time, we had data that identified gaps in phonics in particular. So we were able to bring in the foundation in the early grades, K, we're building up to third grade, to have that program in place, and it's been working very well for students. We're constantly looking at the data from that, but we feel confident that that will close that disparity that we have had in phonics. But the literacy, this particular group of elementary teachers has been thorough and thoughtful in their work. And speaking about equity, they're looking at biasing in the material. They're looking at avoiding stereotypes in materials that they're choosing, simply the pilot, not even yet purchase. So, and what was great, we just had our meeting so far, we've had like 7 meetings, I think, or 8 meetings, one on Zoom, and then the rest, well, actually, all of them have been on Zoom, but some are after, the other 6 of them have been after school. And the teachers said to me today, can we meet in person next week and really feel this material and look at it together and talk about it? And I'm like, oh my God, of course, I'll do anything, I'll have it any place to get everybody back together again. So we're feeling that connection, and the fact that they want to do that is just, I can't say enough about doing this. So wanted to commend that group. That ties into 2 other pieces I wanted to mention, the grants that we've received recently. The first one is around literacy. We had to submit, Karen and I submitted last year, no, 2020 spring, plans based on the Student Opportunity Act. That was a law that's in place that asks districts to submit a 3-year plan that's reassessed by DESE in the state. So we'll be doing that in 2022. It focuses on areas that we need to improve on, that we've identified as disparities, one of which was early literacy and on its areas. So we had said that we wanted to focus on phonics, and we've been doing that. But the teachers said, you know, it's really important to go along with that, these affordable libraries that go along with the foundations program, which is all part of Wilson. So I looked into it, it's very expensive. And we wanted to get one for every teacher, K for 2, that's what they're designed for. So put in for that grant, and we were invited actually to apply for the competitive grant, and we were able to get $60,000 to $2,200 before to get these libraries for each of those teachers in those grades, and they are ecstatic about them, and so they're doing themselves to work in the funds for their students in class. So that was the big news. The other one I want to mention, we're talking about equity, is the Digital Literacy Now grant. It's a small amount of money, but it's part of a bigger picture. I know I talked before about the work we're doing around computer science. And each of these smaller grants are enabling us to bring teachers in for workshops and for trainings, paying for subs while they do that in school, and then enabling them to go out to trainings to learn to teach computer science. And for the equitable part of that, this is that equitable access to education. It's not just for some students. I think we talked about that earlier as far as AP and honors. All students would experience opportunities to take computer science. We have that now in 10th grade as an elective, but we also have 7th, now 8th grade next year. There will be more
requirements for students to take computer science, and we intend to expand that down to the other courses on technology. So this grant is like another stepping stone for building that opportunity. I feel that is really wanting for folks, for students, for graduates to go into those fields, but it also computer science reaches out to so many different areas. And it's exciting, it's project based, most of the time, and so I'm happy to do that. So those are really the two highlights. I didn't know if you had any questions about them. Congratulations on the grant. I know they represent a lot of work. So appreciate it. Any questions? Karen?
Thank you. I just wanted to close the loop a little bit. I had mentioned about the tiered focus monitoring review, the old CPR that's done by the state, and the educational stability review, which is our foster care, homeless, and military families review. The school committee did a lot of work on policies to get us back up to date, and we finally got the official findings that we were fine in both areas. So I just wanted to kind of close the loop on all of that they included everything. So thank you for working on that.
Yes,
It does. The Berlin pre-K, I also wanted to mention, I think some of the community members that have been on with us for a while may remember that we tend to go with one preschool being quite large, and then we kind of switch to the other preschool. It's never consistently one preschool is bigger than the other. We're seeing an increase in Berlin in our special ed students especially. So we didn't have a choice. We needed to add another section for next year so that we have enough spaces for our special education students. So we also have been advertising and putting it in newsletters that we're looking for more typical peers. We have some of the typical slots filled, but we're still looking for more typical peers. So if you know people, spread the word. So they can apply at the school.
There's no continuation of those roles into the grades, is that right? Like guaranteed, like trade student is guaranteed to a spot.
If you mean if they're from another district.
Yeah.
Another district is if they come to our preschool, they are not a school choice student, so they do not keep them. And we do have that happen quite often, as we're very interested in the early preschool. Yeah. And I wanted to share a little piece of the update on the 5-year plan, and thank everybody for your support with increasing our special ed coordinator at the elementary level back to a full-time position. We had to cut it for budget reasons a few years back, and it's been a struggle. And each year we put it back in the budget and end up cutting it because of other issues. So we're happy that it stayed in the budget this year. And we've been interviewing this week, and we've had some fantastic candidates, so we're very excited. Yeah. So that's it. If anybody has any questions. Karen?
All right.
I'll take a seat for just 2 seconds, just in case you have any questions, but so my report, it's very brief. Over the vacation, we were able to install at each of the buildings outdoor access points, similar to the ones that are in here in the auditorium, but basically made for outdoor to handle the weather in New England. It went well. Crew was in here for 3 days. Got the APs up, and we were able to test. And I'm happy that they actually had better rates than we thought. Again, these are primarily, we still have, although most of our kids are back, we still do have remote kids. And so as the weather gets better, and we're hoping teachers will be able to get their kids outdoors a little bit, they'll still have to be able to connect to those kids at home. So these outdoor access points will allow for that to happen.
Paul, I have a quick question, not necessarily on that particular topic on wireless, but are you
utilizing, can you give an update, have you gotten, how are you doing with E-rate? Are you utilizing E-rate to make any purchases this year? I mean, I know federal funding obviously has been great, that continued
So,
extension, but, yeah.
so we will, again, the reason we only put up 2 in each building, I would rather, again, for our reimbursement rate's about 20%. So, and that would be reimbursable with, putting up more access points. So before we really figure out what part of, the campus we want to cover, and what would be best, we'll do that through D-Grade.
Any other pieces of the network that we're?
So we already, for all of our internet access, for the switches that we replaced recently, and again, all the ones hanging in here, we redid the wireless, we did that through D-Grade, so it was all, again, like only 60 cents on the dollar for the district.
Okay.
We just felt with the pandemic, they have released a new hardware layer like that, which we just felt that trying to plan for that this year wasn't going to be a good idea. So going forward, we'll have a probably again another big project similar to what we did with our signal.
Thank you.
Thank you for including those pictures, that was helpful.
Paul? Okay. Superintendent evaluation subcommittee.
Just an update on a couple things. First, thank you to everybody for completing that self-assessment. All the results are in. That self-assessment again has 2 functions. The first is to help committee members reflect on the functioning of the school committee prior to assessing the superintendent, to avoid conflating our own performance with his performance. And the second function is to inform our goal setting in the fall. So Lori and I will be writing a report to bring to the committee in September as we start to think about 2022 goals. So we're going to let that ride and work on the report, June or mid-summer, and bring it back in the fall. Any questions about the self-assessment? Okay, and now we're entering the superintendent's evaluation phase, and Christy sent out the evaluation forms today, along with some reminders. I assume everybody got that. If you did, please let Christy know. These are due back May 14th. So that's 10 days or before. Please contact Lori or me if any questions come up about that form, if you know it can be confusing, or if you need any just help understanding what to do. The one thing I do want to point out is the goal, when Jeff went over his goals tonight, the numbers that he had on his report are different. They're in a different order than they are on the form. So don't just jump from number to number. Read what the goal is and make sure you're aligning his report with the proper goal on the form. Lori and I will work on compiling the results and bringing you a report for the June 8th meeting for the evaluation. Angela, do you expect to be completing that evaluation, even though this is your last meeting?
Yes, I will be. I'll have it in this week.
Awesome, thank you so much for doing that. That's hard to do when you're on the way out. All right, I think that's it. Anybody have any questions about the evaluation?
Nope. Thank you again for all the hard work. Always make it easy on us. Maybe make it too easy. Things to think about, and I'll kind of wrap, I won't go too much to the top, but obviously with my goal doing officer reorganization next meeting, we'll be appointing a new superintendent evaluation subcommittee, policy subcommittee, along with those discussions. So
for the following. Yep. So, I'll probably, reach out to everybody directly offline to kind of just talk through ideas. Get volunteers and talk to who might want to, so that way, we don't have to, when it comes time for that piece of the conversation next meeting, we won't spend too much time. We can hash some of it up prior. School committee goal updates. We'll start with Mr. Lewis.
I did send out an email to you guys. Take a look at it. That would be something I think is, be a good idea. Obviously not this year, possibly, the fall, get the words out. I've done quite a few of these, types of fundraisers. I've been doing my whole life. Yes, sorry. I'm looking for the school. Sorry. I feel like I'm talking to only people who got the email. I'm looking to have the school committee do its own fundraising, to do an event that all of us would participate in, and just to raise money. And it's not just about raising money; it's also putting our faces out there and show that we, kind of normal people, and that we don't we don't just sit at these meetings. And I think it'd be fun, and I really think it'd be great interactive. Bring all the communities together, which I know a lot of these type of fundraisers do to begin with, but I just think it would be a good thing for the school committee to put their stamp on, that we actually love to raise money for the schools as well. I know if there's more to talk about, I don't need to get into it more, but this is something that I'm pretty good at. I've been doing it a long time, so I would be happy to take that on if you guys think it's a good idea.
So, for purposes of tonight, what I think we should do, is obviously the year is coming to an end.
Yeah,
Full year perspective.
Or,
It's probably leading into the next year perspective, maybe wrap around something on the beginning of the year as
that's
the next school goes, right? So I think as of tonight, we'll do a consensus on it, get a consensus feeling from the committee that they get yay or nay on something we should do, good idea, and then Heath, what I think you should do is, take the consensus, go back, and then bring a proposal to the next meeting, right, in terms of what that would look like. Maybe not the June meeting, because it's gonna be busy.
Yeah.
You have a meeting until.
I actually think, and I wrote to Keith about this, but, I actually think that we should table this till we talk about our school committee goals, because I think this can wrap around, a goal that we may have next year based on just a quick review of the self-assessment results. I think this can tie in nicely with, school committee goals, and, just wrap right into that.
When we usually do that, that's
September, October.
October.
Yeah, I wasn't thinking, obviously.
Okay, so why don't we,
Immediate future.
all right, so consensus wise, we agree, a good idea, we'll take that into, as part of the topic for our school committee goals as we move into the following year. Angela? Yeah, please.
No, so actually, I'm gonna have to, so I was gonna meet with Mike and discuss the onboarding process, ask for his feedback, recommendations, different things like that. And I'm gonna use that with Julie as well. I'd like to do it direct, because with Angela, she really streamlined it, and then I added in some different things. And then Mike's really helped me along the way to remember things that I forgot that were important. So I feel like it's really a work in progress, which is great.
It's great that you often point to people who give that feedback and the tweaking that we need, and then see how that works.
Absolutely, and I think Mike can be really instrumental in that, because he's gonna be able to say, this was great, this was not, what you should do is this, like. It's really.
What's the thoughts on with Angela coming off of that goal with leading the committee? Mike, what's your thoughts on appointing you to the authority on that goal? and it really will just be put out until we do our next set of goals.
Yeah.
Just part of that, and then be the next phase of it. All right, well, I'll appoint Mike to replace Angel on, I don't know if we want to, but, the onboarding, people.
Can I add something else
Yep,
about it? The only other thing I did was the assistant treasurer, we would appoint that next month, and really all that is I sign checks when our regular treasurer told, because is unavailable for some reason, or they can't reach him for some reason. It's just a stand-in person, so, yeah, that's something we just want to keep in mind. It's a very behind-the-scenes sort of job.
Oh, got it. Yeah, just, I did, like I said, in the advisory board, I did reach out, like I said, to a few other people. So I'm still working.
All right. Any other updates there? Okay, item number 8, the Moses Retail Scholarship.
Let's see, so I had two items in the Moses Reed Tyler. The first is a first read for the committee about the committee. I described last meeting about moving the awards committee into a community-based model overseen by the administrator at Tohoto. And the document that in the folders this month describes that in more detail, what the responsibilities of the administrator would be, and the process, the purpose of doing that. So since it's a first read, I just wanted to ask if there are any questions about any on that proposal.
Make the questions, who or what people did you have in mind to be the Toronto administrator, and is there a staff that's even willing to do that?
Jeff, do you want to respond to that? Because you were going to talk to Diane, you haven't even heard conversations with them about that.
Yeah, I just assumed that she got back to you, then I said, you stopped talking, and I realized you did it, that she did not. But that's, I think that the feeling from the schools is that the way that it's presented, that would be very cumbersome, or because usually that goes through guidance, and the administrator and administrators can handle that. So, I think what's gonna have to happen is you'll have to, and I don't know exactly how they do it, but with the initial conversation with Diane, is that the process as it's laid out is, would be cumbersome for them to handle.
For anyone in town.
Yeah,
That would have been good to communicate. We could have maybe worked on that before this meeting, so I'm disappointed not to hear that here. Now, I sent out 2 communications about that. and not get a reply. I guess we have to take that back to the drawing board. Not the, or find a different supervisory group.
I almost feel like, do you think it's possible, Susan, to do it the way you did this spring, with having school committee members make anonymous copies, make sure that there was a subcommittee on board, and get those copies to the subcommittee, and then,
I mean, it's possible, I'll have to look into it, I think it depends on Russ's interpretation of, I think in that scenario, it's just a legal interpretation really, of whether that still operates as a subcommittee of the school committee. If it's a subcommittee of the school committee, then it's something to the whole meeting. So, it's just, so I think that I would certainly, it's a tenable approach, but it's just a matter of whether it solves the issue that we're trying to solve, which is to protect the privacy of the applicants.
I just feel like if the school committee person was a point person to coordinate that and make a copy.
Yeah.
Like you did,
Yeah.
it wouldn't be a second, it'd be more similar to what we do for Marion Hoffman, which
Yeah.
is really just
Yeah.
a little legwork behind the scenes. The teachers choose who gets that award, the teacher delivers the award. You know what I mean?
I'll look into it. The second item is a report on the recommendations of our committee members for Moses Lee Tyler Awards. And so first I want to thank Carol Young and Rich Mariani from Berlin to serve on this committee. They're terrific committee members, very thorough and fair, and they once again have volunteered and have indicated interest in continuing on this committee. The recommendations are in the report. And so that's a vote tonight to accept the recommendations of the committee. Provided a demographic description of the applicants, and their final recommendation is to award a total of $16,275 to 14 eligible applicants. 3 awards of $525 each, 3 awards of $900 each, and 8 awards of $1,500 each. Anybody have any questions about the scholarship recommendations?
No, thank you, obviously, both those folks again. For their participation. Yeah.
Yeah, they've done great. Carol Young and Rich Mariani, thank you very much.
So questions there, and so why don't we cover Mary Hoffman now?
Yes, so, on the question from the last meeting, it probably makes more sense if it was a Berlin member who handled this, but really doesn't need to be. I did reach out to the accountant at, the town account for Berlin, June Fuller, to find out how much is in the Marion Hoffman account, which is just kind of like a trust account, it's still a bank account. How much is in there, and there's $689.28. For the last several years, we've been giving like a $25 gift card, Amazon gift card per student. If there's 2 fifth grade classes, there's 1 per class. So I guess what I'm asking is either at this meeting or your June meeting, go kind of close. If you're gonna get some gift cards and give them over to the school, if you wait till June, is to appoint a member to take care of that and to appoint the dollar amount for the award. And like I said, would recommend keeping it $25 and then 1 gift card per student. It's usually given to a Berlin student with someone that is a volunteer, and an avid reader, because Mary Hoffman was so civic minded and very volunteer and loved to read. So we're just kind of, the teacher picks out a student that has this sort of similar attributes. They can relate to.
So do we need to vote on the amount?
We usually do each year.
Okay, so I'm gonna do that now, so we get that rates done, this is, I don't know if we want to do that now. So do we, agreement on the 2 awards of $25 each? Can I please have a motion to approve the Marion Hoffman Award to $25 value gift cards?
So
Second that.
Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay. As it relates to appointing someone to do that, we only have 2 other members at this company, so I volunteer. I appoint Mr. Stotman. Thank you, Mr. Stotman, for raising your hand on that. Makes sense in the reason we do most 3 times. All works out. Cool. Okay. Any other questions, comments on that agenda before we move to business items?
Okay, item number one, could I please have a motion to approve the Moses Reed Tyler Scholarship recipient awards as presented in your drive, as well as Susan this evening?
So moved.
Andrew and Keith, thank you very much. Questions, deliberations? All those approved?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none? I should have said aye, sorry. I didn't say it, too busy reading, because I'm used to it. Some of these we might have discussions on, I just want to make sure we get in the habit of doing it the appropriate way. Could I please have a motion to approve the early retirement incentive bill?
So moved.
Second?
All right, thank you very much. Questions around this?
So this still hasn't been passed, it's still in committee, so this is vote if we approve it. It's really just if it should pass in the legislature, then teachers are going to take advantage can, right?
Correct. Let me give you some information that was given to me from the union today.
Oh, okay.
Just to kind of give you an idea, I don't remember who it was, but asked Tara Koziak if she could come back and give us some information on how many teachers might take advantage of this thing, take advantage of it if it passes. They did put out a survey to the entire union. They did not get great response. Out of the whole union, we only got 32 completed surveys, which really isn't a great barometer. My guess is it's probably because it's a question that may not be in the wheelhouse of the remainder of those people. So, but anyways, 32 completed surveys. Out of the 32 that answered, 15 claimed they would be eligible to retire early under the bill if approved. Out of those 15, 8 said they would be interested, 5 said they might be interested, and 2 said they would not be interested.
And do you have a sense of how they're spread across the various public school levels?
That is not information that I have.
And so I guess there's an element in this bill that says, I forget what it's called, the local district has to pay if they can't replace those positions, correct? Jeff, is that right?
That is correct.
And
We shouldn't worry about that. We shouldn't worry about that.
even with 13 people saying they might retire.
Yeah, that's a bigger district usually that they use it to cut positions, so they just, someone leaves, they just don't retire. We would retire all of them. That's really, that's put it by the MTA, really, to prevent districts from using it as a way to cut staff.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess, yeah. All right.
Any other questions?
So when we vote, this is legislation, they pass it, we still have to accept it, is that what we're all
Yeah.
doing?
The last time this was done at the state level, so it didn't require a school committee vote. This is done at the local level, so when and if it passes, school committee does have to approve it for educators in that district to take advantage of it.
But it hasn't passed yet.
It's not,
Why are we voting on it if it hasn't passed?
Also, might it be changed in the legislative process?
I don't know, I don't.
So, I mean, we might be voting prematurely.
Maybe. I think the preemptive vote is just if the legislature votes right before the English session or whatever, and in June, and school's out, and the teacher wants to be ready over the summer, and community members like start in the I mean, I don't know, I just looked at it today online, kind of where it was in the process, and it was sent to the Committee on Public Service. So like,
I don't think they're anticipating any changes to it, since it's being done at the local level. I think they should never do that.
I mean, it was presented to us as a first read last month, so we requested that it was put on the agenda for preemptive vote. That's a great question, though. We didn't ask that last month while we were preemptive voting on it.
My suggestion as chair would be that we do vote on it tonight. If there is concerns about why we're voting on that, we can always, there's always the option of not approving tonight and it being re-brought back up at another meeting. After it's passed. I don't know if timing makes any difference, meaning if it gets, we voted down tonight and, oh, tomorrow all of a sudden it's approved, and we've got to wait. I don't know what timing of gap means. Bob, anything to add from a financial perspective? Is there any risks, rewards versus?
I would say if you, financially, like Jeff said, we're not one of those districts like that has a huge number of classrooms, and you're gonna look to at a position where we're lean and we're a small district. So financially, no, though if the bill changes, you might think about voting that, assuming there's no financial implications, that you approve it. I don't know if it's gonna pass as in its current form.
Yeah.
I don't know where it is in the legislative process. But the way it's presented now, it's not gonna have any financial impact to us at all, other than a little bit of savings in the replacement costs of new teachers. So it potentially is a savings.
Yeah.
But it's also, flip side, have some positions to fill. We have some.
Yeah.
I would think that it would just be most important to get this voted before the summer, so that if the bill proceeds, and we're not in session, we've already approved it locally, if teachers can go ahead and start the process.
And if the committee is more comfortable, we could, make an amendment to the motion and we could delay the vote to the June meeting. If the committee is more comfortable with that.
Yeah, I wouldn't be truly adding to the language of the agenda, because it would just be delaying the vote to see if there's an update on anything from that perspective. And then we could put ourselves to vote. So will we just want to make the amendment to the motion to just move the vote to June and not vote it on it at all?
Yeah, I'll make that amendment to see if we can move the vote to the June meeting rather than tonight.
Is my professional sitting in the front row? Is that, thinking that's good? Okay, so amended, accepted?
And then,
Oh, we need a second one?
and then we have to vote.
And then we have to vote on the amendment, okay. Do I have a second for that amendment?
I see.
Thank you, Mike, okay. All those in favor of the amendment? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so we'll vote on this in June. Just take it real quick. Okay, item number 3, could I please have a motion to approve the school committee meeting dates for the 2021-2022 school year? All right, crowd,
Second.
you made the motion? Keith, Mike, second, thank you both. Questions, discussion?
I raised the question of whether the February budget hearing on vacation week was an issue, and I didn't hear back. Jeff, you had said that it might be an issue, and then I didn't hear anything further.
Well, I mentioned it might be an issue because people travel, but
And
that's just observation on my part.
including the school committee, where it might not be a school committee forum, but you have to make any votes during that, I don't know.
But that was really just an observation. That happened.
Yeah, I mean, we could move it now, or we could, and mention committee dates and meeting dates is going to be another topic we'll continue to talk about before we depart. We could amend it now and change the February date, or we can leave as is, and if there's conflicts, amend as we move along and vote to change dates throughout the year. I'll leave it up to the committee.
Well, I would say leave it up to you and Jeff, because you are the agenda planners, and we meet with forums, and, these are the, I think it's a leadership issue to decide that particular issue.
I would vote that I would make a motion that we vote on the agenda as it's stated today in the draft. We can make any changes to it moving forward. Very good with that? Yeah. All right, so I have my motion, all those approved? Actually, sorry, before I go there, I'm sorry, I have one here that I'm going to put now. Angela, before you leave, I want to, Tuesday nights, has it always been Tuesday nights?
No, actually, it used to be Wednesday nights, and when I joined, I had a conflict on Wednesday, so they changed the date. So it's been Tuesday since fall or May of 2012.
Because of you.
Because of me, so you can pick any date that you want.
Does anybody have any, is there any inclination from anyone other than myself that to change, I don't want to be noted, to change the nights of the. Okay. I would prefer Monday nights would be best for me, as my, as things, my children get older and everything, I have quite a few more contracts on Tuesday nights now than I did previously. So I'm proposing the idea of Monday nights. Most town meetings, other committees are Monday evenings. What I would do is try to position and look at the town select board meetings, stuff and roll through those, so I wouldn't want to have two major politics and meetings, right? That would be my only risk in Monday nights, would be seeing, we'll be seeing a conflict there, we have two major meetings, fighting for public attendance.
Right.
Could be a good thing. Knock it off.
Roman select boards are Monday nights. It seems like it'll be complicated.
So I'm just proposing the idea.
It also would mean the materials that need to be a shared drive before the end of the previous week, midweek. And we already have trouble getting them in on Fridays.
Jim, I have to say, I appreciate that, as I almost asked Julie, one of my questions to her was almost, what was the score of the baseball game that our sons are at? It seems like Tuesdays always tend to be a night when there's a game or something like that, so I appreciate this, even just discussing it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it seems like such a small thing to discuss, but it's really not, right? Because our goal of the committee is to encourage more volunteers and more people to do these things. And, a lot of them are parents and folks, and, when we come up to an election standpoint. So it is something that we do need to be cognizant of because, 4 years ago when I started this, had I had the same amount of conflicts on the Tuesday night, someone like myself may not have volunteered. I don't know if that's the case, but,
So I need to just understand, we just voted the meeting dates, so are you,
we cannot vote on it.
oh, I thought we just did.
No, I just stopped it before I started into it, but I meant to bring this up before so we have not, with the motion happened, we have not voted on it yet.
So are you proposing
I would propose that we move our meeting dates. Well, let me ask Jeff and Chris, let me ask administration too as well. This doesn't just impact school committee members. I'd like to get the feedback from the administration as well. If they see a major conflict impact of, obviously there'll be a change in the beginning, but we're talking about next year, right? So, the, scheduled dates will stay. We'll change them to Monday nights, moving forward for the fall school committee year.
So I don't understand how you're thinking about the conflict with the select board meetings. Because that's a conflict in law.
Conflict of boils.
Yeah,
But
so
I'm
why
not-
would you place them on the same night as the select board meetings?
I would try not to. I would try to work the calendar so that they be.
Oh, we have.
There are
every meeting. I think our select board meets every week.
Every Monday night.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
Every single Monday night.
I think so.
Except for Monday.
Boy.
What to do, bro?
And you need to check with your meeting better.
Yeah,
Maybe you want to delay this vote too.
Yeah. Oh boy, okay. I don't know, is there enough interest in the committee to potentially move the date off Tuesdays? I'll amend this motion.
I don't mind moving it off Tuesdays, but like at work, Monday and Friday are the worst days to have meetings. It's just people start in the week and people end the week. That's tough. Wednesdays, maybe, I don't mind. I have no love specifically for Tuesday, but, I just think Monday.
No, I'm trying to figure out how we should handle this, and we're spending too much time on this at the moment, so I want to just move us through this right now.
Let's think.
So I think we should just table this until June.
Okay. All right. I'll make an amendment to move this close to our June meeting as well. We'll add some more input into it, and we'll do some more research on the individual towns and meetings and that sort of stuff. Okay, do I have a motion? Could I have a motion for, I'll make the motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, all in favor? Aye, opposed? Look at that, we only need 3 votes and 2 of them we didn't even do. We're quiet. Could I please have a motion to approve the updated special education coordinator job description?
So moved. Second.
Okay. Questions, concerns? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Could I please have a motion to approve the updated pupil personnel director job description?
Second.
Questions? Hearing none, all those approved? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. And number 6, could I please have a motion to approve the elementary math coach coordinator job description?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, questions? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Could I please have a motion to approve the guidance secretary registrar job description?
So moved.
Second.
Both. Quick, good motion right there. Questions?
Enjoy 3 courses.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Could I please have a motion to approve policy BDA, school committee organizational meeting review and revisions?
So moved.
Second.
Questions? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, could I please have a motion to approve the policy manual review plan?
So moved.
Come on, Keith, a little quicker. Okay, any questions?
Thank you again for doing that, I think it's great.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And could I please have a motion to approve the Moses Reed?
That's a first read.
Oh, that's the first read. Sorry, we already did that one. Okay, sorry. Yep, first read there. Last thing is school committee, and the reason why I was saying we were gonna get to this and talk about this, so our June 8th meeting, right, we're scheduled to do, reorganization of officers. We have superintendent evaluation and stuff like that. Mr. Topman is not able to make it to that meeting, and I actually potentially have a conflict as well, which kind of generated this whole, discussion. So, I am proposing that we potentially move that particular meeting because I think it's important for every committee member to be there for both of those items, the superintendent evaluation as well as reorganization of officers. I know people, I don't like this like Monday nights, but I was going to propose the following Monday night, 14th. Maybe a little test to see how we like Monday nights, Mike. Yeah, I know what he's saying, though. That's a busy thing.
Flag.
Is there anybody opposed to moving our June 8th meeting to the Monday night of the 14th? I didn't want to push it back too far because it was Jeff's evaluation. You're good, Susan, you good? Okay. All right, do I need to make a motion to move the meeting date, Christie? Okay, can I please have a motion to move our meeting of June 8th to that of Monday, June 14th?
That's my birthday, that'd be good.
After I make the motion, you say that?
No, I didn't have anything to do, I just mentioned it.
Would you prefer a different date, Jeff?
No,
We haven't voted yet.
I can't think of anything better I'd like to do.
We'll bring you a birthday cake. You can't hold the candles 'cause it's COVID.
Yeah, right.
I mean, at this point, nobody's still on that thing anymore, right? They're not essential.
Well, we know Jim does say it's June fourth, which is a Friday night.
Yes, I made the change.
What's
I know,
that?
it's a Friday night.
It's a Friday night.
One on June fourth is a Friday.
No, they said June
I know.
14th.
I know.
Not 14.
Oh.
Oh, yeah.
No, it says on this.
Yeah, that was an error. It was
I
an
know, I'm
error.
just joking around.
Okay.
Keith is
All
always.
right, can I please have a motion to move our meeting date, June 8th to June 14th? Okay, second, thank you, Keith. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Jeff, you can give them. All right,
Thank
can I please have a motion to close? Any other comments before we close up?
I just said thank you.
Okay, could I, Lori, make sure Julie knows that the meeting date changed?
Yes.
All right, could I please have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved.
All right, second, Angela, all in favor? Aye,
Aye.
opposed?